IVM.
BQ Big Decisions, the Bloomberg Quint podcast that helps you make the right financial choices. Do men and women approach money and money matters differently? I know what you're thinking. There isn't really a difference in terms of the desire for money. Clearly, in most cases, it would be fair to say that men and women who don't have money would rather have it, and those who have money would rather have more of it. But that's not what I'm getting at. I'm talking about the behavioral tendencies of men and women when it comes to their finances and how these play a part in financial planning. This is BQ Big Decisions, and the question we're asking today is, do women approach money and money matters differently than men? I'm joined by Abaneeta Chakraborty, a financial consultant who has been a private banker for many years now. Thanks so much for joining me, Abaneeta.
Pleasure, Alex.
Now, I do want to get to the crux of the conversation. Is there a fundamental and an observable difference in the way that women approach money?
You know, if you talk to a man and a woman who are probably at the same levels of their careers and ask them how their portfolio is doing, what their retirement plans are, you are most likely to notice that the woman will shy away from that conversation.
Okay.
They will probably not give you enough information or, pretend that they know nothing often, and generally not answer your questions. Men, on the other hand, seem to be a lot more confident and they will probably tell you their best stock picks and go on and on. But women in general seem to be shy and a little less confident about how they manage their own money.
Abaneeta, right at the top of this conversation, I do want to establish that this is not meant to stereotype women in any way. It's simply a means of trying to understand the woman's psyche when it comes to financial planning. So I want to understand, when you say that there is an observable difference, is this because of certain traits that women have? Is this because of societal learning, perhaps?
Yeah, allow me to make a little bit of a distinction between broad categories of people in terms of how much wealth they have. Because I have an HNI background, I have dealt with a lot of HNI clients who are women, and they don't seem to exhibit these properties that I just mentioned, And you're absolutely right. I guess it all stems from their dinner table conversation with their parents and how they have probably talked more about money as children, and their parents have been more forthcoming in discussing what's going on in their businesses and stuff like that. So HNI women in general are a lot smarter about money than I see people from mass affluent or middle class.
All right, but that has to do with perhaps their learning and the exposure that they have to certain information that other people don't have, or rather what other people are not interested in. But is there a more central reason? Is there a more biological reason, shall we say, why men and women are different?
The central and biological reason actually tilts in favor of women. Let me explain why. Women in general have about 5 to 10% of testosterone that men have in their bodies.
Okay.
And testosterone, as you know, is the hormone which makes you go on and take risk. So it's because women have less of that hormone in their bodies, they are relatively calmer. It's true that they tend to shun risk more, but it also translates into their trading less, they're being more calm when the markets are behaving erratically. So if there was a biological difference, which many claim, it's actually, in favor of women. So, but I just think that women are not aware that intrinsically they are better investors and they are able to handle their money better. And there are various ways in which that can be established.
So at the start of this conversation, I believe that Abaneeta has established that women who are listening, you guys are definitely better at handling your finances than the men in your lives. And the men who are listening, this is a message to you from Abaneeta. You should involve the women in your lives a little bit more in the planning of your finances. Is that right, Abaneeta?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you a little statistics here. Did you know that in microfinance, about 75% of the portfolio belongs to women. In fact, the largest microfinance company, which is Grameen Bank, apparently has 90% portfolio of their portfolio as women, which means that, somewhere women are perceived as more creditworthy, they are perceived as more level-headed, and they seem to be taking their money responsibilities extremely seriously. And here, mind you, we are talking about the lowest strata of women in the society, right? So, which is why I said that there are a lot of innate strengths in a woman in when it comes to managing money. It's just that perhaps they are not completely aware of it, and they say that there is a long-standing shame and blame happening here, and they're just not confident.
You mentioned dinner table conversations, and Abaneeta, I think that has a lot to do with what we're talking about today. Is that I've heard this from people that I've spoken to. Women are not really encouraged to speak about money when it comes to their salaries. It's almost, you would say, that talking about money is a bad thing.
Yes, I don't know what conversation your parents had while you were growing up with you, Alex, but my parents almost seemed to instill in me that, money was not the most important thing. In fact, I think there was a hint that if you have too much money, you perhaps don't become the best human being. Even a hint of that, which is why when I first started going for interviews and I was asked, what are the things that motivate you? I was shy to say money. I thought it was a bad thing to say, which has changed, of course, with the younger generation. But what happens with typically richer people who have been running businesses and have been taking risks, they approach money matters very differently with their children. And I recently went to a family office summit where there were a lot of entrepreneurs who were running their businesses in the second generation or the third generation. And almost everybody seemed to agree that the children who have joined their businesses and taken money seriously, whether they were women or men, were able to do that because of the dinner table conversations that they had. They made money matters simple. And I have worked with one of the best investors in terms of being prudent and being wise and sharp that I have ever worked with is a woman.
Okay.
Who is, is managing her family business in the third generation, and is, asks me the most difficult questions and takes the most prudent calls. And over the years, I have come to respect her decision-taking ability much more than many of my other clients.
So you've been doing this, Abaneeta, for 18 years now, and you've been handling money, other people's money. You've, of course, interacted with a large group of individuals. From the kind of questions that women and men ask with regard to their finances when they come and talk to you, is it distinctly, markedly different?
Yes, absolutely. You see, again, I'd like to say that, in the mass affluent middle class women that I deal with, women are shy to ask, okay? They possibly think that, I mentioned shame and blame. They possibly think that what they will ask is going to come across as a little dumb or too, amateurish or too basic. So they feel shy. But that also means that they sometimes ask you questions which completely take you off guard, which are so basic that as a financial advisor, you ought to be able to answer them.
Sure.
And these questions revolve around risk and stuff like that. In the HNI segment, these questions are difficult. The questions that come to me from women are really difficult. If I could give you an example, when real estate funds were just coming into the markets, I remember there was this lady client who I had approached, to recommend a fund to. She asked me a simple question that, if banks are not lending to real estate companies, then why should I lend to them? Because the product that you are asking me to do basically tantamounts to my lending money to these real estate.
And that's a very pertinent question.
Yes. And we landed up not doing the product. And we laugh today that it was because of her prudence that the family did not invest a large sum of money in a fund which incidentally gave negative returns after 8 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you say then, and this is just a bit of a light-hearted question, would you say that you enjoy managing women's finances more than you?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you why. While initially it does seem like a daunting task, because, when women get down to asking questions, pointed questions, they can be a little tough. But the good thing is that once you've made a portfolio for them and they have co-created that portfolio with you, in terms of having participated with you, they are most likely to stay the course.
Okay.
They will not call you up when the markets are falling, and they're not going to get jumpy, and they're not going to question the decision that has been jointly taken every now and then. So as far as I'm concerned, I love working with women clients. I wish I had more women clients. It's just that I have met more men who are richer in my profession, but I definitely like working with women more.
Increasingly, and we are seeing a large number of women joining the workforce. Of course, there are statistics and studies that show that parity between men and women is still far away. It'll take decades perhaps for pay parity to take place. But if we say 20 years back, if women were doing higher education courses and not joining the workforce, at least today, they are. So they have certain amount of income that they will need to manage at some point of time or the other.
Alex, what I have to say here is that the problem never was, stemming from the fact that women were not earning enough money. Okay. Just because women are earning enough money today doesn't mean that there has been a behavioral change in which they look at their money.
Okay.
In fact, I'm of the opinion that our generation is in a bit of a soup, because we are earning more money than anyone before us has. But we are also extremely seduced by the expenditures that we could possibly make, right?
It's so easy to buy stuff now.
Exactly. So what's happening is we're earning, we're spending, we're possibly not saving and investing enough. And we are unaware of the fact that there will come a time when we will become sandwiched in terms of taking care of our elders and also taking care of our children, and there will be huge expenses that have to be borne, which we may not be financially prepared for.
Okay.
And this may also be happening because this money is being earned for the first time. Our generation doesn't know how to deal with the money that we are earning and has traditionally not saved. So your question that if women are entering the workforce and they are earning more money, will things change? Things will not change unless the behavioral approach towards money changes. The more money you have does not translate into more savings and more investments.
In fact, and this is spoken about a lot, a large number of people, and this is not just women, it's men and women across the board who leave large amounts of money lying idle in their savings bank account because they don't start the investing journey till it's perhaps a little too late.
Yeah, I would be more concerned with people who have no money in their savings account. I am among those advisors who doesn't shy away from telling the client that if you are at least saving in a fixed deposit, then you at least have a saving habit, which means you are a cut above a large number of people who are unable to save at all.
Okay. And that's a very interesting that you mentioned fixed deposits, because I do want to talk about the kind of instruments that traditionally have been associated with women. And it's been said that women prefer the more safe options, fixed deposits, say jewelry, gold, real estate. And in certain situations, I've heard financial planners even advocating going for this. Is this something that is the norm? Is this something that you think needs to change?
I am personally of the opinion that there is no need to change anything there. Let me give you some examples. Okay, I have a client who is a lady who told me that when she got married into a very rich family, her mother-in-law insisted that she take up the duty of managing all the real estate that the family has.
All right.
Okay. Now, these guys are worth about probably 300 crores. So if one of the spouses looks after the property, because property is also yielding income, mind you. These are old properties, so their rental yields are very good. They are not what you get today.
Sure.
What's the harm in that? Similarly, I have another client who tells me whenever I ask him to buy gold ETFs or funds, he tells me that his wife takes care of the gold portfolio. And while Indians are unlikely to sell their jewelry, but isn't it true that if really one was in dire straits, what stops you from selling jewelry? There's nothing that stops you from doing it, right?
Yeah.
So like I again said, that if you're just mindful of stacking money away, even if it were in real assets, you are not in such a bad place.
Okay.
Here we are trying to tackle a situation where people are actually spending all that they earn and not saving at all. Okay, so I'm all for having property and gold and even fixed deposits. I don't think there's anything dumb about that. And I think as a generation, we have started telling people that, you must invest in equity. It's a new thing, right? A very small portion of our population invests in equity. Right?
Yes.
So, during my entire journey, which is about maybe 20 years, we have been telling clients, please do equity. Now, that's all good. But I'm saying do something.
Okay. No, I get your point. I do want to understand whether you're saying you must draw a distinction here in that should women approach, and this is a practical question, right? Theoretically, you may say in all situations that equity for the long term is a good product. But if traditionally, and if a woman has been averse to going for equity, do you think that you should force them to make that change, or do you think it should be incremental?
No, of course it should be incremental. In fact, I am saying that since we are on the topic of men and women, I am saying that if women did do some equity investments, incrementally or otherwise, their temperament is possibly going to steer them ahead of men. Because the investing that men do in equity without quite understanding what they're getting into, they start picking up stocks and then they tell you only about their success stories. But I have seen portfolios which have gone horribly wrong.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm saying that if women were steered in the path of equity, it is likely that they will land up making a better portfolio than men traditionally have. But I'm also saying that it is not mandatory that people must invest in equities. It's a good thing to do. We encourage people to take on more risk in expectation of higher returns. But, there has to be a method to the madness.
Okay. Now, of course, the crux of financial planning, they say, is goal-based investing. And we're talking about all of this in the context of risk-taking ability. And we were talking about this just before we started recording, right? And you said that there's a difference between risk appetite and risk tolerance. What were you saying with regard to that?
Yes. See, women do not shy away from saying that they do not have a risk appetite. And I am all in favor of that. I mean, at least they know who they are. I land up with men who have a huge disparity in the risk that they think they can take and what they can actually take. And behavioral experts will tell you that if there is a huge gap in what you think you can take and you can actually take, then you behave irrationally. You start jumping and you book out a loss too early and you try to juggle your portfolio and you discontinue your SIPs. You do all sorts of things which are irrational,
sure.
right? So behavioral economists have written pages over how you behave irrationally if you are not prepared for the risk that you're taking. So of course there's a difference. And I'm saying women have an edge because they start from the beginning saying that I don't have that risk appetite.
Sure.
So even if they do invest in equity, it's at an incremental level, like you said. So, one of my favorite ways of getting people to invest in equity has always been investing the gains of liquid funds, You used to switch those gains into equity and make people taste the flavor of equity.
Fantastic. So now we have reinforced the topic that we started with, in that you say that women are better placed to handle their own finances. Now, having said that, perhaps a lot of women listening to this podcast will say that they still have their finances that are handled by the male members of their family. And that hasn't changed very much. Do you think that should?
Now, see, if somebody is married or is in a great relationship and they have decided that money will be managed by one of the spouses, which is usually the man of the house. There is technically nothing wrong with that. But here is a gory statistic for you that, women outlive men. Generally, which is why insurers will always, charge you a higher premium for life if you're a woman.
Okay.
Which means, and this is going to sound very gory, that women often land up being widowed or single at a much older age.
So what you're saying is that they must learn to manage their
Yes,
finances.
and if they have conveniently left it to the male members of the family, then suddenly there will come a situation when perhaps the son of the family knows that it is his money to manage, and the woman will not be treated, the elderly woman will not be treated properly, isn't
There's a danger.
Yes, I mean, women are more subject to elder abuse everywhere in the world. There is statistics to prove that. Okay, so here you're a woman who, let's imagine you're a woman who has never learned anything about family finances, doesn't know where the insurance papers are, doesn't know how many bank accounts are there, doesn't know anything. Her husband has done everything, and she has a son who knows that he has inherited everything and doesn't want to take care of his mom. Who wants to be in a situation like that?
So this is obviously a hypothetical situation, and hopefully this is a very small number of cases.
So I gave a very negative outlook on this, but I'm saying this is reality, right? I mean, there is statistics to prove that women are more subject to elder abuse than men everywhere in the world.
Fair enough.
Okay, so if there are people who assume from the beginning that, we have to be fit, both physically and mentally and financially, so that we're not at the mercy of anybody, even if they were our children. What's wrong in looking at it like that? You're not necessarily taking a negative outlook in life, you're just being practical.
Being practical, and of course, I would think that it's very hard for parents to think the worst of their kids to begin with. So it's not an easy situation to deal with.
Yes.
But you're saying that before you even reach that point, you must really secure yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that most of us will probably land up taking care of ourselves, our children, and our elderly parents. So we better be prepared.
Okay, fair enough. So basically, if you haven't made a start, Abaneeta is saying that you must make a start. You need to start asking a few questions that perhaps you got a sense of over the course of this conversation. I believe that more or less covers all of the bases, Abaneeta, that had to do with the behavioral aspects of how women deal with their finances. And I think this sets the stage for several conversations that we will have over the course of this series that is BQ Big Decisions. Thank you so much for joining me today, Abaneeta.
Pleasure being here, Alex. Thank you.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to this conversation. If any of the aspects of this conversation resonated with you, do let us know what you think in the comments section. That's all we have for you in this edition of BQ Big Decisions. This is Alex Mathew signing off.
If you enjoyed Big Decisions, check out some other podcasts on the IVM Podcast Network. You can check out Paisa Vaisa, hosted by Anupam Gupta, Advertising is Dead, hosted by Varun Dugirala, the Ronnie Screwwala podcast, hosted by Ronnie Screwwala, or Cyrus Says, hosted by Cyrus Procha. These shows are available on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Are you constantly seeking happiness? Wondering how to make the most of every day? How not to let your inhibitions stop you from achieving your goals? It's now time to get your A game on. It's time to unlock your true potential. Tune in to the Empowering series with me, Zarina Poonawalla, to feel empowered in all genres of life. From behavioral skills to management skills. From health to relationships. From mental well-being to emotional well-being. And of course, your finances. I've got you covered. With these tips and tricks from me, Zarina, and true life stories from my amazing guests, you're bound to bring your purest to the table. Tune in to the Empowering series with Zarina Poonawalla every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello everyone, I'm Zain.
I'm Avanti.
And welcome back to a brand new season of Marbles Lost and Found.
A show on mental health and its stigma, and we're kind of making it an open conversation.
Pretty much, yeah. And we're really, really excited about this season because we have a number of guests on and we'll be talking about things like addiction,
grief, children and mental health.
Exactly, children and mental health. And our listeners have also written in
Yeah,
this time. Yes,
and we have an episode dedicated to that.
Yes, and guys, thank you so much for writing, and we really, really appreciate it.
And we're really excited for you to tune in on Tuesdays on the IVM website or app or wherever you get your podcasts from.
And you can find Marbles Lost and Found on Facebook, or you can find Marbles Lost and Found on Instagram as well, the handle being Marbles Podcast India.
Can't wait for you to tune in.
Thank you very much. See you guys soon.